insofar as I think as a new Minister of Finance, is that we should institute fiscal discipline and go by the books, such that institutions, no matter what level they are, should be able to do that which is required of them and do that which is right.
Let's go to the agenda for prosperity for a minute. Pillar 2 of the agenda for prosperity, which is basically about the management of mining
Natural resources.
of natural resources, and accountability and transparency of the management of our mining revenues is critical to achieving Pillar 2. And that is also the core of the EITI process. Now, we have been suspended. We still have to submit some report, which will be considered down the road. What do you think the suspension of Sierra Leone within the context of the EITI would mean to the government of Sierra Leone, as well as to the agenda for prosperity?
Okay, there is an element here I really wish that you note. Being suspended, temporarily suspended, doesn't take Sierra Leone out of the process.
Oh yes, sure.
The new Chief of Staff and the team are currently working on those two anomalies to ensure that they are quickly corrected and done with. But what we have done as a country is to even go beyond the EITI process. The EITI process requires you to report only. Now, what government is doing here is to say, okay, fine, under our minerals resources, opportunity that we have that will, create boom for us in the future, we need to create what we call a transformation fund, such that a certain percentage of every royalty or taxes paid in this sector are sent to that pot. Those resources could be used to transform our human resource capacity, invest in investment, go for infrastructure or health or social services to be able to transform the country. Now, that is a brilliant way of going about it, even beyond the prescriptions of the EITI. The EITI is saying, report what you receive, publish it. Now, government is saying, irrespective of being able to publish what is there, we want to be prudent about the resources that we receive. Let us establish this board. Let us put money there and ensure that we invest in transformation. So that is one element. Now, what we are working on right now is to identify the fiscal rule that will guide us in terms of how much resources will be put there and how it will be used. Now, do not forget that at the end of the Sierra Leone conference, a citizens committee or bureau was established. Now, what will you wish we do? At the end of the day, government will have to be open to the rest of the public to say, this is what the transformation fund is doing. This is how much we have received, and this is how we are doing it. Now, the EITI isn't there yet. This is the beauty of what we are doing. We are saying that not only will we establish a port where some of these resources will go, but that will be able to report to the public what we are doing with those resources. We are moving ahead of the EITI process. And according to our strengthened approach under the EITI, government is doing it such a way that will be leading other nations in this. Because if you take a look, there is no nation within the sub-region that has gone this way. And we really intend to go as far as possible in ensuring that we cash in more in this area and be able to transform our country.
We'll come back to the TDF, the Transformational Development Fund, for a minute. But if we as a country could not meet the 18 requirements of the standards, meaning we are not 100% open and transparent, what confidence do or should Sierra Leoneans have that if a TDF is established, the government will be really open and transparent in the management of those resources?
I think you really are missing one element here. The country reported everything. And the beauty is, it demonstrated that there were discrepancies. What the country is doing is ensuring that they put strategies in place such that these discrepancies may not recur any longer, i.e., that local councils report, that mining companies ensure that their audit report meets international standards. Now, these two elements are very significant, but if you take a look at the 16 passes, there are elements there that are far more significant. So, we were not particularly delisted.
Oh yeah, sure.
Fine,
Yeah, yeah,
as,
we
as,
are
as other nations. And I don't want to go into naming other nations because this may be viewed by the rest of the world for integrity reasons. But for us in Sierra Leone, all we need to do is just address these two issues and we are fine. Now, what they are saying is, you have made significant progress. And if you take a look at the report, it is there. But they will wish that Sierra Leone meets these two requirements to be able to be compliant. Now, to be compliant only means that you have done what they will require you to do. But that doesn't mean that you are not doing the right thing. This is what I wish you to do, to note. What they want Sierra Leone to do is to ensure that these remaining requirements are met within a very short period of time, noting that we have made tremendous progress. Now, you may ask, for the MCC, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, there are about 20 indicators. We've been failing since 2004-05. In 2012, we are able to hit 12, above many countries in the sub-region. We are not given a treasure, we are given a compact. So we scored 12 out of 20, but we passed. In the EITI, they are saying that you need to pass all. 16 passed. They are encouraging Sierra Leone to only meet the remaining 2. But that does not preclude Sierra Leone from doing that which is right. So I'm saying we are even going in many other areas over and beyond the EITI requirement. The cadastral system, as I mentioned, is the best in this sub-region. The establishment of the transformation is innovative. It's also new within the sub-region. So there are many more initiatives that the country has embarked upon that are way and far beyond the EITI requirement. That is what I want to underscore.
But clearly the validation of Sierra Leone is critical for
that will be done within a short period of time.
Issues. And the question here is September 31st is the deadline for us to submit our report. And this is clearly or will be our last shot at getting validated and be a compliant country. I know you're no longer the champion of the EITI, but what do you think should be done now to ensure that Sierra Leone does not miss out and we are not delisted?
I think we've done 98% of it. Only 2 more things that could be done easily. I don't see it as
if you think they were easy to be done, why didn't we do them?
You are making the same mistake as others are doing. You are asking me to get companies audit report for 2008 to have met international standards in 2012. How could I have done that? You know,
Burkina Faso, they are a candidate country.
They are a candidate country.
Yeah.
But we are doing far more better than many of them.
But they are a candidate country.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's shift a little bit to the economy of Sierra Leone. You are the new Minister of Finance and Economic Development. Talking about the Transformation Fund, what management system do you think our country should put in place to ensure that the TDF, if set up and running, would be managed properly?
Now, what I would like you to note is that the president of Dr. Ernest Baikoroma is an inclusive and participatory one. First, we are trying to establish a fiscal rule, and as I said, the fiscal rule will set out the parameters within which this fund will be operated. Secondly, there is a Citizens Bureau that is drawn from a plethora of sections of society that will be part of the process. They will all be part of the process. And thirdly, what you need to know is this particular thing is an innovation. It really is not present within the sub-region. And as I said, we are moving ahead of the curve, ahead of other nations. So how it may shape at the end of the day will depend on the input of each and every player. So at the end of the day, we'll have something that is people-owned as well as, government supported. So that is how we want to go about it. I cannot here sit as a minister and say this is how it will go. It meant that I'll be putting my imprint on it. It shouldn't happen like that. It should be inclusive as well as participatory.
Now, clearly, that would have an impact on our normal or government budgetary system. So what you're suggesting here is that we have parallel structures. We have the consolidated fund, our budgetary system, where revenues definitely will have to go into it to run government's business. At the same time, you have the TDF. What implication would the establishment of the TDF have on the normal budgetary process?
It depends on which side of the fence you stand. Now, a school of thought will say, you cannot be innovative as much as possible if you put everything in a single pot. And what you and I want is to ensure that the people of this country know what is happening to mineral resources and how they are being utilized. That was why I said that we're even moving ahead of the EITI process. It meant that you and I will be able to know a percentage that is being crystallized in a particular pot for transformation. What is it that government is doing with it? It's a way of helping country as well as government to sit down, identify what is there and what it could be used for. There are many trust funds, for example, that are established across governments for specific reasons. What we have here is what we'll have is a special fund for transformation. That is well captured. Now, all of this sits within government. And I don't think there will be any confusion, because at the moment, what I'm trying to do as Minister of Finance is to ensure that we establish a single treasury account, such that no matter how many accounts we have in government, there will be a pseudo account that captures all. So there will be no problems
That is exactly
at all.
the reason why I put this question to you, Mr. Minister. Because as Minister of Finance, you have the responsibility to manage our state's resources.
Yeah.
Therefore, you should have an idea about how you will manage two parallel budgetary processes, basically. Because the Transformation and Development Fund will meet. It will not, the money that you're talking about in the Transformation and Development Fund will not go through the normal budgetary process, would it?
It will be a subset of it, because let me explain. Because in crafting, for example, our budget for a particular period, we'll say X amount of capital project or social project could be done through use of the resources from the Transformation Fund. Why? Because it helps government and citizens to be able to know what we are doing with our resources. It helps us, to checkmate. It helps us to look inwardly and see how best we are doing with those resources. Now, that is a risk if we integrate everything into a single pot. You may not know, for example, how well we are doing in terms of managing our mineral resources. Now, that is a question. That is an element that I would like you to know. Do we, for example, utilize all of these resources for our generation alone? If you integrate everything, that is the risk you are running. Now, what we are saying is, no, forget it. Establish a pot. And then begin to ask, do you, for example, invest those resources for the next generation? Or do you just utilize it now? So what we are saying is, as a government and as a people, we have to be innovative in terms of how you use resources that accrues from the mineral sector.
Now, the concern here, I'm talking about next generation, saving for next generation. Does that mean that the money that would be in this pot, the TDF pot, would be like a savings account for my kids and grandkids, meaning the government necessarily would not use that?
That wasn't a concern to you. I raised it. Like I told you, it really is useful to engage and re-engage so you know what is happening. Mm-hmm. I just told you of a fiscal rule. Mm-hmm. A fiscal rule that set the parameters through which these resources could be used. Now, those fiscal rules would clearly articulate when and how these resources could be used.